Hey friends, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing the mid-year freakout book tag. Which I'm so excited to do this tag. It's one of my favorite videos to make every year because I get to talk about, some of my favorites of the year, some of my least favorites, most surprising, most disappointing, all kinds of different stats, and I think it's super fun. But before we do jump into the video, let me tell you about a recently published edition of The Great Gatsby. Blackstone Publishing has recently published this gorgeous edition of The Great Gatsby, and it's actually going to be the first in a series of classics available in this striking new collection, which includes illustrations of some of the most iconic scenes in the novel. And I personally love when books include little illustrations of different scenes from the novel. I feel like it adds so much to the reading experience, and so I absolutely love that this book has that. There is also an audiobook that is narrated by Tanner Buchanan, who you might know from Cobra Kai or the Netflix movie He's All That. And he's going to be the first of many exciting celebrity narrators who will be helping a new generation of audiobook listeners discover these classics. This was actually my first time reading The Great Gatsby. It's been a book that's been on my list of reading for so long. Like, I've been wanting to get to it for forever, and I'm so glad that I finally did. I actually feel like The Great Gatsby is like the perfect summer classic book because there are so many beautiful quotes in this story about summertime and how like the world begins again in the summertime. So I think if you're wanting to read The Great Gatsby and you never have, then summertime I think is a perfect time to read this book. I think the writing in this book really surprised me because it's very dreamy and very whimsical, and I actually thought that it was super easy to read, which is something that I usually struggle with when I read classics. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like them because sometimes I find the writing really hard to get into or just really hard to read in general, but I feel like with this book, it was very beautifully written and very easy to get into. I also think that Tanner did such a great job with his audiobook because he really brings these characters to life, and I love that he gives each character their own unique voice in his narration. It was a really good audiobook that I would highly recommend checking out. I think that this is such a stunning edition of The Great Gatsby and that it's an absolute must for fans of the book or for new readers who are looking to get into more classics. So I'll have the link down below if you want to check out either this physical book or the audiobook. The link will be down below, and thank you so much once again to Blackstone Publishing for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get into the mid-year freakout book tag, shall we? So naturally I do have a few different responses for most of these questions because it's so hard to just narrow it down to one thing, and especially because the first question on this tag says, what is your favorite book that you've read so far this year? And this is a tough one, because I have read so many incredible books this year, but I think if I had to pick a top favorite, it would probably be Notes on an Execution, because this book just floored me with all of the feelings and things that I felt for this book. This book is kind of like a slow burn mystery, kind of like thriller, but it feels more like literary fiction, I think, in a sense. And in this book, we're following this serial killer who is on death row, but we get to see his life through the point of view of all of these different women that have been in his life. And this book was just super, super beautiful, so well written, and it just really makes you think, and I think that's why it's one of my favorites of the year. But then I also think one of my favorite romances of this year has to be Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Like, I just loved and adored this book so much. I've actually been considering rereading it just because it made me so freaking happy. And I know that's such a basic answer, but also, I don't care. The next question is the best sequel that I've read so far this year. And if you know anything about my reading taste, you probably know that I don't tend to read a lot of series. I'm definitely like a standalone girl, like I read one book and then I'm done. This year, I read the Heartstopper graphic novel volumes. I read 3 and 4 this year, and these books just have my whole fucking heart, like if you're not into Heartstopper, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but you need to get on this train because it's incredible. And these these books just follow Nick and Charlie. It's like young adult, gay, teen romance, and it just makes my heart soar. Like, these books are so freaking cute. They are graphic novels, so they are pretty quick to read, and I just love them both so much. I think the third book is my personal favorite out of all of the books in the Heartstopper series so far. I also did want to mention that I read Count Your Lucky Stars this year in March by Alexandria Bellafleur, and this one is the third book in a romance series. So these are books that are hard because I don't technically consider them to be like in a series, but because they are a part of a romance series. But you don't have to read the first 2 books in order to read this one, but this was a sequel that I read this year that I really, really loved. Next question is a new release that you haven't read yet, but you really want to. And even though this book isn't technically out yet, Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, this one comes out in late August, I think, but I've had this one sitting on my shelf for a while because the publisher sent it to me like a month ago and it's just been staring at me in my face for so long. And I think I'm gonna read this one during Summerween or possibly even sooner than that because I can't control myself anymore. So this is a new release that I'm very excited about. I'm also super excited for Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. This was a June book of the month pick, but it's actually my August book troop pick. So I'm waiting until August to read this one, but I'm so freaking excited to get my hands on this one. I think this one does publish in the month of July. And then a recent romance that I'm very excited to read is How to Fake It in Hollywood by Ava Wilder. This is another one that I'm hoping to read in the month of July. It's one of my most anticipated romances of the year though, because it involves like fake dating and it's gonna be chef's kiss. Like I can just feel it in my bones that I'm gonna love this. Question number 4 says most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And there are so many books that I'm looking forward to that are coming out later this year. One that definitely comes to mind right away though is It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, because this is like either a sequel or prequel or something to do with It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, which is my favorite Colleen Hoover book to this day. And so I'm hoping that this sequel or whatever is gonna be amazing. I think it just follows Atlas if I'm correct, which, you know, Atlas is the main reason why I love It Ends With Us. So I am so excited. I think this one comes out in October. And then I'm also pretty hyped about Daphne by Josh Malerman. This is, you know, Josh Malerman's latest horror novel. I think this one's coming out in August, I want to say. But very much looking forward to Daphne. I think that one's going to be very fun, hopefully. Josh Malerman is very like hit or miss for me sometimes, but I'm hoping that this one is going to be a winner. And then the next question is going to be my biggest disappointment of the year. And that has got to be, it's tough, you know, because there are a few books that have been very massively disappointing for me. For example, 9 Lives by Peter Swanson was a massive disappointment. And I think it was because, you know, Peter Swanson has been an author that I've loved a few of his books. And so even though I haven't enjoyed his last few books, I still had a lot of faith and hope that I would love this one. I even had so much hope that I would love this that I made it a book troop pick for the month of April. And then I ended up giving it 1 star. It's definitely my least favorite book troop pick that I've had for this year so far. And it's just a massive, huge bummer. And I'm really sad about not liking it. And then also the book Hide by Kirsten White. This is another one of the only other books I've given 1 star this year. And I'm mostly disappointed in it because the premise is so freaking cool. Like a hide and seek game in an amusement park that turns deadly. Like I should have loved this and I absolutely hated it, and that makes me sad. And I wanted to add on to this as a book that I'm disappointed by because it was super hyped for me is the book Every Summer After, this romance book. Yeah, I don't really get the hype with this romance book. Like I don't personally see it, but I'm so glad for everyone that loved it. I just think it was a huge disappointment for me and I don't really get the hype with it. Next question is going to be the biggest surprise for me this year, which I love. You know, there's nothing more than going into a book being like, I don't really know what to expect, and then absolutely loving it. Like that is my favorite thing ever. You know, that is the reason why I will always read books that I'm not sure about and not sure if it'll be my thing, because that always happens. Because Battle Royale is a book that I read earlier this year in May. I actually read this book because I was doing a video dedicated to reading some Japanese thriller and horror books. And this one had always been recommended to me, Battle Royale. You know, it's like a classic at this point. It came out in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and I just never thought that it would be my thing, you know, because I'm not a huge fan of the Hunger Games, and it just sounded like it was going to be something similar to that. But this book was incredible. It was so freaking good. This book, it reminded me a lot more of like Squid Game, and even though this book was like 600 something pages, I flew through this book in like 2 to 3 days. Like I could not put it down. It was so action-packed, and it was just everything. Like I'm so surprised. I never thought that this would be my thing, and it's definitely one of my favorite books that I've read this year, so I was very surprised. And then also, I was very surprised by So Happy For You by Celia Lasky, mostly because this is a thriller that I just went into not really knowing much. I hadn't heard any of my friends talking about it, and I was not expecting for this to be like a 5-star, one of my favorites of the year when I read it. I love this book so much, but this is not a book that I would just go around recommending to anybody because I don't think this book is for everyone. I feel like a lot of people will probably dislike this book, but I feel like for my specific reading taste and personality and how much I related to this main character, I really loved it. I thought it was great. All right, question number 7 says favorite new author, whether this is, you know, a debut author or just somebody that's new to you. And I think I'm actually gonna have to go with Junji Ito as my new favorite author that I've discovered this year. Earlier this year, again, for my Japanese thriller horror reading vlog, I read Uzumaki and Shiver, and those 2 books were freaking life-changing. Like, they were so freaking good. They were actually the first manga novels that I've ever read, and so maybe I should just be reading more, but like he's amazing. His horror is just really genuinely so creepy and so effective, and I really love his mind, like the ideas that this man has. It's just some next level shit, you know? So after reading these 2 books, I've like made it a goal for myself that I want to read as many of his backlist books as humanly possible. I actually went to my library recently and I saw that they had Ramina, I'm not too sure how to pronounce this one, but I saw that they had this there. I had never even heard of it, but I saw his name on it and I was like, yeah, let's go. This one looks like it might be a little bit more of like a sci-fi horror manga, but you know what? I'm here for it. Again, I want to read all of his books now because I love his writing style and I love his brain, and like his illustrations are genuinely so creepy. And then another author that I didn't discover them this year, but I've just been getting a lot more into them, is actually Eric LaRocca. Because last year I read his book Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, and it's one of my favorite horror novels that I've ever read. And so this year I've been reading a few more books from him. This one is You've Lost a Lot of Blood, and then we have We Can Never Leave This Place, which I'm pretty sure both of these also published this year. And You've Lost a Lot of Blood is a new, you know, favorite horror book of mine. I think this book is just so creepy and eerie and weird. And even though like his books aren't always like, this one for example was like a 3-star for me, but I still think that his writing style is everything in a horror book. Like I love his writing style so much, and I think he's genuinely like one of the best horror writers out there. Like if you like horror that is just genuinely so disturbing and really gets under your skin and makes you like bleh, then I think you would like his stuff, you know, highly recommend checking it out. He's just an author that I will be automatically reading everything that he writes in the future, so I feel like that's a really good sign to me that they're a new favorite author. Question number 8 is your newest fictional crush. And even though I've read quite a bit of romances that I've really enjoyed this year, I don't think I have any like standout fictional crushes that I've been crushing on. Because to be honest, all of my time that I spend crushing on things is dedicated to BTS this year, you know, because I got into BTS in March, and ever since then I've been crushing on those 7 boys, so that takes up all of my brain space. But my newest fictional crush, I would have to say might be Jack from Lease on Love. At least he's the love interest that stands out the most to me out of all of the romance books that I've read this year. I just really adore Jack. And then question number 9 is your newest favorite fictional character that you've read this year. And the first one that comes to mind for me is Joy from The Romantic Agenda. I feel like, you know, as an asexual human, and I also read about her being asexual in this book, I just really connected with Joy in this book, and I connected with her story, I connected with her experiences, and I really related a lot to, you know, her friendship with Malcolm in this book. And I loved seeing asexual representation in a romance book. I feel like I've never even heard of that before, and so it was really refreshing. Joy was definitely one of the most relatable characters that I've read this year. I just absolutely loved her, and I felt so much while I was reading this book, and it made me cry. But then I would also say Robin from So Happy For You is also one of my most relatable characters that I've read in a long time, and I feel like if you read this book, you're probably gonna think, damn, like she's an asshole if she relates to this character, but like, sorry, I do. I relate to her so much. I just love that she's like, you know, very opinionated, and she just has these strong beliefs. I feel like Robin is like me in book format if I was more comfortable with confrontation. The next question, number 10, is a book that made you cry. And I was actually looking through most of my books, and I don't really think I've had too many books that have made me emotional this year, but one of the ones that did come to mind is actually Crying in H Mart. This one is a memoir about this woman who, you know, loses her mother, and it's very complicated for her because her relationship with her mom wasn't perfect. Definitely brought a few tears out of me by the end of it. Oh my god, like one of the last passages, I tabbed it because I was just like, that is stunning and beautiful, and it really hit me hard. I feel like any books that deal with, you know, that talk about somebody losing their mother is always something that's gonna get to me and make me cry, because I can never even imagine, because I'm so fucking close to my mom. So reading about these kind of stories usually make me very emotional, so this wasn't that big of a surprise. But then also Heartstopper did actually make me emotional as well. It was more volume 4 that made me more emotional, because I feel like volume 4 is a bit more, you know, heavy and emotional, and it talks a lot more about like mental illnesses and things like that. So this one definitely affected me quite a bit. The next question is a book that made you happy. You know, besides the obvious answers like Book Lovers by Emily Henry, like of course the romances that I read tend to make me very happy, because that is why I read romances. But also, you guys are gonna think I'm fucking crazy, because I think the books that made me the most happy this year were probably Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins and Good Rich People. Oh my gosh, there's nothing more I love in this world than a fun, kind of chaotic, ridiculous, over over-the-top thriller. And I feel like both of these books just really did that for me, you know? Good Rich People, I actually fucking loved this. Like, I gave it like 4.5 or 5 stars. Like, it was a good one. But then Reckless Girls, I ended up only giving about 3 stars to. But regardless of the ratings, I have the most fun when I'm reading a ridiculous thriller. Like, this is the reason why my thrillers are like my go-to genres, because it genuinely makes me so fucking happy to read about these ridiculous situations, like being trapped on an island with some people that you might not trust. Just the most fun, you know? It's just so entertaining. And then Good Rich People, like, are you kidding me? Reading about these rich people trying to ruin the lives of these other people who like move into their guest home. Reading from this bitch's point of view just made me so happy. It was so funny. Freaking love a good thriller. I just love it so much. I'm hoping that I feel the same joy when I read the new Riley Sager coming up pretty soon. You know, I've just heard such mixed things and I'm nervous, but I'm hoping that that book brings me the same joy, because reading a new Riley Sager book just fills me with a kind of serotonin that is very rare. The next question, number 12, says your favorite book to movie adaptation, or just your favorite book adaptation in general that you've seen this year. I was actually looking through a lot of the books I've read this year, and I feel like there's not too many adaptations of the things that I've been reading, but by far my favorite has to be Heartstopper, of course. You know, I read these earlier this year, and then Heartstopper came out on Netflix, and it freaking changed lives, mine included. It was fantastic, so beautiful, and it was definitely one of my favorite, like, book to TV adaptations that I've ever seen. Like, I can't even believe how much I love the show. I love the show probably even more than I love these books, which is just crazy to say. But like, they casted these guys absolutely perfect, and like, they're just so beautiful together, and it just makes my heart so happy. So definitely Heartstopper. 2 potential other books that could be included on this list is actually The Great Gatsby. I really did enjoy this book, and I have not yet seen the movie adaptation with Leonardo DiCaprio, which is just crazy because I'm a huge fan of a lot of the actors in this film, but I just never saw it. So I feel like this one could be once I see the movie. And then same goes for Battle Royale. You know, like, I know there's a really iconic movie from the year 2000 that this got adapted into a film, and the film is really highly praised and very loved, and so I do eventually want to see both of these films. I just haven't gotten the chance to see them yet. Question number 13 is one of my favorites because it says the most beautiful book that you've bought this year or that you've received this year. This book, Out There by Kate Folk. Oh my god, this is stunning. Like, I'm obsessed with this cover. I'm not totally sure if it's just the colors or if it's like the design of like this square like looking design on it, or the font choice, the way it looks kind of like neon lights. I don't know what it is about this cover, but I'm absolutely obsessed, and I cannot wait to read this. I tried reading it a little earlier this year and I just wasn't in the mood, but this is like a short story kind of like sci-fi collection. I've seen it get compared to like Black Mirror episodes. You know, a lot of people say if you like Black Mirror to read this, so I'm very excited to get to this one, and I am absolutely obsessed with this cover. Like, it's beautiful. I'm also a really huge fan of the cover, but also the title of this book, You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. Like, what? Are you kidding me? That is stunning. Love it so much. I also recently just bought this edition of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is another classic book that I'm hoping to read a little bit later on this year, but I only went onto Book Depository to buy this book because I wanted this edition so badly. I don't know what it is about this edition that really speaks to me, but I love this cover. I love it. It's just so stunning. Like, look at it. It's like his face is kind of covered by this like circle right here. I don't even know. It just looks so moody and mysterious. And compared to all the other covers I've seen of this book, like, I haven't liked a single cover before. And then I saw this and I was like, okay, I need to own that now. And then the last question on this says, what books do you still need to read by the end of the year? My TBR list is honestly like a mile long. Like, I have so many books at any given time that I'm wanting to read. But one book in particular that I'm making it a goal for myself to read before the end of the year is House of Leaves. And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, like, shut up, like, you never actually read this book. I put it on my TBR all the time and then I never get to it because I'm super intimidated by this book. Okay, I really am, but I'm making it my goal. I'm like, okay, I need to read this by the end of the year. So I'm hoping that by the end of this year, I can finally say that I've read House of Leaves. Like, that is a goal that I would like to have for myself. And of course, I would very much like to get to a number of these books that I've already mentioned in this video. Like, there are so many books I would love to get to before the end of this year. Like, I know it's gonna happen. All right, so that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know, what are the best books that you've read so far this year? What are the most disappointing? What are the worst books? Give me all of the tea down below. I would love to know. And yeah, thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye.